when you use Apple Pay, that's real money.
But it's like people my age have $55,000 worth of credit card debt.
I'm 35 years old and in $169,292.74 of debt.
Debt has been a pretty big topic I've heard a lot about over the last couple of years. In general, there's so many people who are in debt today, and a lot of it is from just about anything, from cars to houses to just swiping a credit card. It's also really tough to manage debt. I think one of the things that's lacking in financial literacy at the high school level is just teaching people about what credit cards are like, what debt's like, what these sorts of things really mean. One thing I really remember about the transition from high school to college was that banks just start telling you to get a credit card. Thankfully, I had a lot of knowledge on finances and how to manage them from a young age, but there's a lot of people who just don't know how to deal with these things. But there's also a lot of people that make poor financial decisions, don't understand what they're signing up for, these sorts of things. For today's video, I compiled a bunch of videos to talk about examples of how debt is really just ruining people's lives these days.
I have $60,000 worth of car debt, with about $30,000 of that being in negative equity. And let me tell you how the dealership scammed me, because I bought my car by myself back in 2022 and I got scammed, and I don't want y'all to get scammed.
So this woman is currently $60,000 in debt, and a good portion of it is from a car payment. This actually is far more common than we want to think. Cars are pretty expensive, and these days they just seem to keep going up and up in price. A lot of the time, these really expensive cars are also just not worth the price tag being put on them. And a lot of the new bells and whistles to try and inflate the price are just that, bells and whistles.
I wanted the Jeep Wrangler, which is the hybrid car. And so basically they were going to order my Jeep and it would come within 3 months. Well, the dealership guy told me that they could put me in a Jeep off the lot for 3 months with no loan payment, and then they would roll the loan over to the new Jeep when it came in. He handed me a piece of paper that said that the car was like $100,000. And when I tell you, I about had a fit. When I had originally went in, the finance guy told me that my monthly payment was gonna be like $600. And then when I told the car salesman that when I was picking up the Jeep, he said that the finance guy lied and that's why he doesn't work there anymore. Now I'm stuck with a $1,000 car payment.
So this woman was originally led to believe that her car payments would be just $600 for a hybrid Jeep Wrangler, which does sound really great when you hear that. Unfortunately, she wasn't just the victim of a sleazy car salesman. She was lied to, which is absolutely wild to hear. I can't imagine being stuck with buying a hybrid Jeep for basically the price of a luxury Lamborghini or something when you weren't aware of that beforehand.
And the reason why I have negative equity, when he rolled the first loan into the second one, he somehow kept it higher. But basically, if I were to sell my Jeep today, I'd be lucky if I got like $35,000 on it, and I still owe $59,000.
She mentions negative equity, which is basically when you owe more on an asset like a car or a house compared to its worth. So with cars, they are usually what we'd call a depreciating asset, meaning that they only lose in value until they basically become junk. Unfortunately, especially with a lot of hybrids and EVs these days, the cars essentially can drop tens of thousands in value as soon as you roll them out of the lot. So her car is not worth $100,000 and is actually worth $70,000 less, which is just sad, honestly. But buying new cars is a big risk these days because a lot of these cars being sold are losing worth quickly as soon as you buy them, and you may end up overpaying dramatically for something that will never net you a worthy price again. Cars are really not worth the major investment of buying them. I honestly would personally go for a lease and switch the car out, or buy a used car. Either way, the car's basically worthless after a couple of years, so may as well lease it or get something that's a little old but functional. And for the lease, if you get 0% interest, that's the most ideal scenario. Interest racking up will just make the amount you paid way overboard compared to the original price of outright buying the car.
5 really stupid things that I did that landed me in $50,000 worth of credit card debt.
Debt in general is pretty rough, but as we're going to see in this next video, a lot of people fall victim to credit card debt. Credit cards seem to be notoriously hard for people since they are sort of easy to fall into the trap of tapping and not realizing that you still have to pay that amount in real-world money. A credit card is just essentially a loan that allows you to spend a specific amount of money within a certain frame of time, but you have to pay it back to the bank. So it's really easy to fall into the credit card debt trap.
The first incredibly stupid thing I did was use buy now, pay laters. I use buy now, pay laters to pay for everything, and I mean everything.
So the buy now, pay later thing is something that I personally have seen grow in popularity over the last year or so. For the most part, financing pretty much was reserved for big ticket items like a computer or something like that. These sorts of big financial purchases are tough to just slam in one go, so a buy now, pay later program was sort of the alternative that helped. However, what I'm seeing is everyone just using Klarna or Affirm for something as little as fast food these days. Genuinely, this is not good in any capacity. Most buy now, pay later programs include percentages of interest, meaning that if your Chick-fil-A was $20 total, after finishing those payments, that money has compounded into possibly $40. It's not a good idea at all. Leave Klarna or whatever for the really big stuff.
The next stupid thing that I did is I traveled when I was severely in debt. Travel is a means of escapism, and it has a really funny way of taking you out of the reality of the financial situation that you're in.
Something that I think has definitely been garnering a lot of attention on social media is definitely traveling. Where I grew up in the United States, I'd met people who had quite literally never even left that part of the state. Small towns can be like that, but I personally am of the opinion that travel is nice, but it's not essential to life. I know some people enjoy it, but when you're already swimming in tens of thousands in debt, travel is not cheap. You can easily end up spending tens of thousands because most people aren't going to give up their luxuries when traveling and won't think about going cheap. Traveling definitely does have a major impact on finances. And although it's fun, if you're dealing with debt, it's not going to be fun when you compound on top of that debt more debt.
The next thing I did was I did not keep a budget. The vast majority of my debt that I was cycling through was caused by just living beyond my means.
Keeping a budget is definitely something I think should be taught in schools more often because a lot of people just don't know what it really means to budget. A lot of people might see the money from a paycheck and think that they have that full amount to spend, but in reality, there's bills, emergency costs you have to set aside funds for, and there's essentials like food and water. Budgeting is a good way to really get a clear view on what exactly your spending looks like because it's really easy with all the online shopping and overconsumption around us to fall into overspending very quickly.
I'm 35 years old and in $169,292.74 of debt, and I still live at home with my parents.
So, this woman here is well over 6 figures in debt and she's only 35 years old. Unfortunately, this looks to be the reality for a lot of people these days, as you're seeing more and more people unable to leave home. I actually was checking some house listings the other day and saw that they're now being advertised as multi-generational homes, which is something that I never thought I'd see in the US, but it's the reality these days.
Let's include 2 private student loans, 10 federal student loans, 1 auto loan, 1 private loan, and 13 credit cards. I've already taken some drastic measures to reduce spending and start side hustling, but the interest on my student loans is wild. My 2 private student loans have interest rates of 12.75% and 8.9%, while my federal loans range from 5.8 to 6.6%. The private student loans are from my undergraduate degree, which I earned over 15 years ago.
Student loans are probably the biggest source of debt for most people, as you'll see throughout the clips I found, but the cost of school is absolutely insane. This woman has been paying off her loans for 15 years and she's not done yet. But if you heard those big interest rates of over 12% and things like that, that is exactly what the issue is with student loans. Federal loans might be capped at the federal rate, but private loans aren't. And when you've got 12% or more compounding annually, then you're going to basically be paying off interest for most of your life. It's insane. But that's why it's important to be aware of your financial situation before you go into school and to pick a degree that you can at least get somewhat of a payoff for. But nowadays, honestly, that's not even that helpful since people with degrees like engineering and computer science aren't able to get jobs these days in their field.
And to this day, I think about all the frivolous things I bought and did when I was in my teens and 20s with this money, and wow.
For this woman's case, she admitted that she sort of spent a lot of that money on things that she now doesn't see as useful or valuable to her life. So it's important to be aware when you're in that age of college what you're spending on, how you deal with money, and to understand just how intense these loans can get and that you need to pay them back eventually. And filing for bankruptcy doesn't help because guess what? Student loans never go away, even with bankruptcy. Yeah, it's a rough world in academia these days.
I'm exposing my debt so you can feel better about your debt. I estimate that we have over $100,000 worth of student loans and personal loans. Let's move on to our credit card debt, which is really our priority right now.
Here's another case of someone who also has a lot of debt as a result of student loans. However, she also says that she and her husband have credit card debt and that it's the most worrying debt.
Credit card number 1. Current balance is $7,513. Credit card number 2 is $8,912.74. Credit card number 3. The current balance is $10,229.91. Credit card 4. The balance is $10,317.05. Credit card number 5. Current balance is $11,812.86. And I saved the best for last. Or maybe the most tragic. Credit card number 6, current balance is $16,582.43. Current running balance of credit card debt is $63,227.
As I said before, credit card debt tends to be one of the easiest to slip into and also one of the hardest to get out of. Credit card repayment interest rates are very high, and the more you max out credit cards, the more difficult it's going to get. However, she has over $60,000 in credit card debt, and it's definitely a difficult situation. Although she didn't specify what precisely those were for, she did mention that she and her husband had to do what they needed to do to survive, so I'm going to assume that a lot of this might be medical debt, which is a big problem in the United States. It's really important to be aware of what you're spending on your credit card, though, and to try not to max them out, as this will become difficult and can harm your credit score. Some people in the comments did recommend filing for bankruptcy, and although that may seem like an easy out, it's not always so easy when you're in it and your credit score is super down and you still have those student loans to pay off anyways.
I have a question. How much credit card debt are you in? Because for context, I'm 26, I've been working since 17, paying for my own shit, moved out at 18, have been independent ever since. And I have $10,000 worth of credit card debt.
Again, here's another person talking about credit card debt, and she's 26 and has a job and everything, and pays for all her expenses and is $10,000 in credit card debt. She mentions vet visits and medical bills and things like that, but she also does admit that she's spent on things she doesn't really need. I wanted to really take a look at this video as well because there's a lot of comments here that we can go through that really highlight just what credit card debt is a result of. I don't think that credit card debt is something ideal to have, but it's unfortunately very commonplace for a lot of Americans who have to deal with a precarious financial situation. Many of them are struggling to pay off their debts, and even with full-time jobs and side hustles, it's just not easy. So a lot of people in the comments don't have credit card debt or don't think it's normal, but one comment here says, as a loan officer that sees a dozen credit reports a day, most 20 to 30-year-olds have between $5,000 and $15,000 in credit card debt, but I also see $50,000 to $100,000 usually from people in their 40s and 50s who make a decent salary. This person here says they've got emergency vet visits and have $8,000 in debt at 30 years old. Another person here said that people who live in expensive cities with little to no help are going to have high debt, which I think would be pretty likely. The cost of living in cities like New York and San Francisco is pretty insane. One person here said that they're 26 and are $20,000 in debt and are trying to get a $30,000 loan to pay it off. But they did clarify that they had a house fire and lost everything and needed to rebuy it all. So that is a very difficult situation to be put in. A lot of comments were from people in Europe who don't seem to have credit cards much like in the United States, which is definitely interesting. In the United States, it definitely feels like it's pretty expected that you need a credit card for the credit score.
We filed bankruptcy 6 years ago and we're in debt again, and I want to go over what that debt is.
All right, so we've got someone here who has filed for bankruptcy but is now in debt all over again. This is another thing that a lot of people don't consider when they do file for bankruptcy is that if you don't fix the situation that got you into bankruptcy in the first place, you might find yourself back in the same position again very soon.
The total amount of debt is $92,589. So we have 2 cars, and so that is a combined total of $41,216.
As I mentioned a bit earlier in this video, car loans are definitely a huge source of debt for many Americans. Sometimes it's just best to buy a used car in one payment and replace it after a few years, as like I said, cars are depreciating assets and really are not great debt to have for most people, especially when you've dealt with bankruptcy before.
Our credit cards between me and my husband are $32,715.
She didn't really specify where the credit card debt came from, but again, credit card debt is a huge issue. It's really easy to rack up and it's really difficult to pay off because of those interest rates. The more you miss, the more it compounds. For example, if you have $6,000 in credit card debt, your interest rate is 22.99% and you want to pay it off in 2 years, by the end of that period, you'll have actually paid an extra $1,541 in interest alone. She also mentioned some other expenses like phone payments and personal loans, but for the most part, slipping back into debt is definitely not something you'd want after going bankrupt, so it's really important to budget and avoid those buy now, pay laters as much as humanly possible because they can creep up on you fast, especially if they have an interest rate attached to them.
I'm 29 years old and I have $17,546 of debt.
$15,217 of those dollars are from credit cards and $2,319 from my car.
Here's another person who has tens of thousands in credit card debt as well. She's also only 29, which it seems to me like the more I see these stories, the more it looks like people are racking up a lot of debt at a very young age. The car loan itself isn't too bad, it's actually one of the lowest we've seen in this video so far, but the credit card debt is pretty huge. I'm not sure precisely what this person got all that debt from, but in your 20s, it seems many people overspend on things like traveling, clothes, food, going out, and other extra expenses that really just rack up very quickly.
Take this as your sign, especially if you are like young. Don't get that credit card.
So as someone with a degree in finance, and from a personal standpoint, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a credit card when you're younger. I think it's a good idea to build a credit score and to learn financial responsibility when you're in college, but I also understand why this person would say that it's a bad idea. A lot of people just simply don't realize what credit cards actually are, and they don't realize that credit cards are not just money you can spend, it's a loan and you have to pay it off. That sort of financial literacy is super important to be teaching younger people, so if there's any parents out there, please be sure to teach your kids about this, because it can be rough when you get to an age like this and don't realize just how much debt you can be in because of credit cards.
So I'm currently dealing with a lawsuit, partake on myself. I do not need this credit card. Yes, it did pay for a little bit of my school and then my like school kit thing that I had to buy, but other than that, it's just been collecting interest.
I'm not particularly sure if the lawsuit she mentioned is related to her credit card debt, but she did say that she's in a national debt relief program. I'm not sure just how large the debt figure is. She said it paid for school, so I'm assuming it's not a small figure, but yeah, you can actually be sued by your credit card provider for large amounts of debt that you're not paying off. So this means that you genuinely might be in for more expenses if you can't pay it off. I think using a credit card should be literally treated like you're using cash. If you have $4,000 in your checking account, you cannot be spending more than that on a credit card. Assume the credit card is a debit card. That's the best way to treat it, in my opinion.
I am $52,813.21 in debt. So starting off with a small credit card, it's $336.21.
Next, I have some medical debt. I've got $7,838.51 to the hospital, and I have another one that's $6,650.49 for a helicopter bill.
So this person mentioned that she's a stay-at-home mom doing side hustles to try and pay off the debt as much as she can. She's got some pretty hefty medical bills, which is the harsh reality for many Americans who need hospital care. If there's a helicopter bill, that would mean a pretty serious situation that required airlifting someone, which usually isn't done just for a light thing, but she also mentions credit card debt, and as you'll see in a second, there's some student loans and car payments as well.
And then I have a student loan for $18,410. I didn't even get a degree. Last, but certainly not least, is a truck payment for $19,578.
I'm honestly surprised at just how expensive trucks have gotten. It's honestly wild because I grew up small town Midwest, right? So trucks are the most commonplace you're going to get out there, and it used to be way more affordable when I was younger. It's pretty wild to see these trucks getting higher and higher in price, especially when you can find a solid and decent used truck for way less, and it'll run just as fine as the new one. Cars, I'm finding, are truly one of the most difficult parts of the debt process, aside from student loans, because they're just so damn expensive, honestly. I also found out about this trend on TikTok where people play a song and they show just how much debt they've accumulated. And there's so many examples of people in this trend who have accumulated thousands upon thousands at very young ages because of credit card debt. Being 23 with that much in credit card debt is definitely setting yourself up for a rough ride, and I don't know precisely what the debt came from. But the song in the background is basically talking about being stupid, so I'm gonna throw a guess here and say most of the debt is from purchases and overconsumption that wasn't necessary. I think honestly we're living in a world where, because we're so connected constantly to the internet and to companies and influencers, it's really easy to fall into the habit of overspending because you see something online and you want it because that's what marketing is designed to do. But not only that, the way the marketing is designed is to continue to get you to want stuff and more stuff. It's important, honestly, to take a step back and budget and think, do I really need all of this, or am I just over-consuming?
If you use Apple Pay, honestly, just be so careful. When you use Apple Pay, that's real money. That's true American dollars from your credit card. If you have your credit card connected, that's where the money is being sourced from.
Honestly, this one is just outrageous, and I had to include it in this video because I was absolutely flabbergasted watching this. So if you have an iPhone or even an Android, you'll know that there's a system called Apple Pay or Google Pay. Basically, you put your real-world credit or debit cards, and then you use Apple Pay like a virtual version of your existing credit card. Mind you, you have to actually put the real credit card info into the app, so I'm not sure precisely why this person didn't realize that, but anyways.
It's not like a special form of Apple Pay, Apple dollars. Why they don't just say this is real money while you're paying, I don't know.
Oh my god, man, is this satire?
Because I thought that I had accumulated a bunch of Apple dollars to use for Apple Pay by, spending so much time on my phone. Because I thought that's how I was getting prizes, getting rewards, getting Apple dollars. So I didn't think that was real money till I checked my credit card bill. I've been spending money like I'm a friggin' millionaire.
I am praying and hoping this is just a joke, but honestly, the fact that I'm not sure, yeah, that tells you that there's definitely people out there that believe this. I mean, the whole thing feels so surreal to listen to, so I'm gonna hope that this is satire. But yeah, Apple Pay is your money. There's no Apple dollars. Please don't do that. I mean, when you even go to use Apple Pay on your phone, you can literally see a virtual version of your credit card right there. I really hope nobody out there believes that Apple Pay isn't money, but the other day I saw this woman who genuinely believed that glasses had medicine in them or something and doubled down on the fact that she thought this her whole life. So I guess anything's possible these days.
I've paid off over $4,000 in credit card debt in the past 3 months. Like, I literally was sitting there racking my brain, like, what did I actually spend over $4,000? What did I actually spend over $4,000 on? And it's just like, the fact that nothing even jumps out to me tells me that I didn't need to be buying any of those things in the first place.
This last video is one that I want to end off on because I think this one highlights my point perfectly. This person had thousands in credit card debt and her boyfriend asked her where it came from and why. And she says that she basically had no idea. Nothing particularly special jumped out at her from that figure, so it's not like she was buying a big ticket item like a laptop or paying off some loans. It's all basically just stuff that she realized she didn't need. And again, this ties into my talks about overconsumption because when you go to a store like Marshall's or something and you start picking up things, you can walk out of there easily having spent hundreds, and doing that multiple times a month racks up to thousands. It's important to be aware of what you're spending on, what you want to buy, and if you truly need these things, or if you don't actually need them. It's difficult because as humans we like to buy things and we enjoy getting new stuff, but if your habits are becoming harmful to your finances, that should be a wake-up call for sure. That's where I'm going to end off for today. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and be sure to turn on those notifications set to all so you can catch every video I post when I post it. Also, make sure to leave a comment below about what you think about all these stories, credit card debt, and things like that. See y'all next time.